Making love with David, discovering David's body, falling in love with David, reminded her of things that were inevitable and perfect. Stones stroked smooth by water, the intricate cores of seashells, the murmur of blood flowing through the chambers of a heart. "Shall we be married, Bird?" he asked. But she knew it was the firelight speaking, glowing through an amber glass, and she did not dare to answer or to hope. David was quicksilver, secret. He disappeared for days on end, and she had no more means to pin him down than she had of harnessing the wind. He always kept at a distance. Sometimes, late at night, after the Soho pubs and drinking rooms had closed, after the last revellers had gone, he would soften and say sweet things to her, tell her that he liked having her in his bed. But even in the early days, Jennet shared that bed with ghosts and with bottle after bottle of cheap whiskey. Often David fell asleep while still inside her, grinding slowly to a halt like a spinning top unwound. Even wide awake, he seemed strangely far away. So she knew that when he talked of marriage, it was in the same spirit that he talked of moving to America, or buying a boat, or forswearing art in favour of the silence of Mount Athos. David spun elaborate fantasies in skeins of glittering gold. Jennet did not expect to marry him. She imagined she would live alone forever, in a corner of a vast white studio, spending nights with David as he chose. Meanwhile, David painted Jennet. Jennet asleep, Jennet reading, Jennet at a window, and Jennet as Mary Magdalene, a woman with the dead Christ at her feet. He made dozens of drawings of Jennet nude. These early drawings were not especially explicit. Jennet's features were only roughly sketched, so that she was emblematic rather than identified. The later ones were different, but they were years away, and for the moment Jennet was content to play the role of David's muse. It bit into her time, though, as David would insist she sit for him at every stage of painting. He said that way the finished pictures were more lifelike. In fact, he did not care to be too much on his own. Given David Heaton's exacting standards, it is strange that in several of the paintings, Jennet looks half dead. His study of Jennet sleeping, for example, shows a woman of bluish pallor, lying back against a crumpled sheet, her mouth slightly open, her tangled hair outspread. She is so pale, it seems she has been drained of blood. The cotton twisted under her might be the fabric of a shroud. At this point in her life, Jennet's is a commonplace story. It could be yours, perhaps, or your mother's or your daughter's. Afterwards, it's useless to apportion blame or wonder how a clever woman could ever be so careless. David may not have known that Jennet was a virgin when she met him. Certainly he did not ask. For her part, Jennet hid her innocence from him as if it were something shameful, and consequently neither she nor David found the words to ask the necessary questions. "Corinne will know what you should do," David said, when he found Jennet doubled up over the lavatory pan, and finally she shared her worry. By then her breasts were swollen, and she was retching on an empty stomach every day. "It'll be all right, Bird. Corinne will know someone who can do it." "Oh dear," said Margaret Metcalfe, and told tales of knitting needles and women dying alone in agony of sepsis. "Why didn't you get a cap?" For want of anyone else, Jennet in the end turned to her sister. They had never been close, but they saw each other from time to time, and Jennet hoped that, as a nurse, Barbara would have the answer. She badly wanted to avoid having to confide in Corinne. She was scared and lonely then, bewildered by David's confident assumptions and her own conflicting feelings. In a book she owned of reproduced Italian paintings, there was the one she loved, a Mantegna of the Virgin and her sleeping baby, the child swaddled in tight bands as if in his grave clothes. Now she found she could not look at it, without the tears welling.